The movie opens up with our protagonist, David Van Owen, who drives to his newly bought house. His daughter, Jessica, is also there to help him in relocating. As the duo wander around the house, they stumble upon a locked door in a closet. On the ground, they find a $100 bill, which David picks up. Thinking that it might be left by someone who lived there earlier, they don't pay much attention to it and buy dinner with the money. While eating, the father and daughter have a brief conversation about the house. It is at this moment when Jessica discloses that she has been dating a guy named Zach Kennedy and that she wants her father to meet him. Through their conversation, we also learn that Jessica is suffering from some health issues and is struggling to pay her medical bills. She should have said that before they spent all their money on the food. David tells her that he might be promoted at his work and reassures her that he will help her pay the bills with his salary raise. It appears that David works in a programming company, which mainly focuses on developing video games. Before departing, he invites her to come over on the weekend so that they can have a little slumber party. Jessica isn't sure if she can make it because she already has plans with her boyfriend that weekend. However, she promises to visit him soon, so long as he promises not to call it a slumber party. On her way home, Jessica calls her boyfriend and expresses her concern for her father. Here, we learn that David has recently gotten divorced, and since then, he is always looking for company, not wanting to feel alone. Early the next morning, David is awakened by a car's horn. Upon walking out, he finds that it's a landscaper who wants to check what needs to be done in his yard. The man is amused to hear David's wish to install his own septic tank. After taking a note of the required stuff, the landscaper leaves, informing David that he will be back next week. Just then, David receives a call from his best friend Mark, prompting him to head towards his place. The two friends then talk over a beer, during which David shares his idea of building his own septic tank. He also reveals that he has taken a huge mortgage to buy the house because he is confident that he will be promoted. After hanging out for a while, David returns back home and starts digging his yard, initiating the septic tank work. A few minutes later, his shovel hits something hard. He quickly removes the soil and unearths a huge wooden box. Intrigued, David lifts up the box's lid, only to be startled by a human corpse. Despite this, he lifts up the lid the second time and finds a huge sum of money beside the corpse. Taking one bundle, he closes the box, covers it with soil as before, and heads inside. Curious about the authenticity of the bills, he examines them with a marker, only to find out they are genuine. Later that night, David is woken up by the sound of footsteps. He gets up and goes out to check, but finds no one. The following morning at work, David's boss, Mr. Wu, shows him the project manager's office, which will be his if he manages to get a promotion. Mr. Wu also offers him a few days off since he's dealing with the new hurdles in his life due to his divorce. However, David assures him that he is fine and he can continue with his work. That day, David leaves early to visit a bank to inquire about depositing a substantial sum. A bank employee informs him of potential legal issues with such a large cash deposit. This scares David, so he lies that the money belongs to his uncle and not him. Once back at home, David is unable to stop thinking about the money. As a result, he digs the yard again and brings all the cash inside. He begins counting it and then stacks it up, adding up to more than $3 million. Following this, he hides the money in the closet with a locked door. Later at night, David again hears some sound emanating from downstairs. He immediately gets back, grabs a baseball bat, and walks down to check. He cautiously ventures outside the door, only to be startled by a cat. Believing that it was the cat the entire time, he walks inside with a sigh of relief. After checking the money in the closet, he starts turning off the lights to go back to sleep. During this, he suddenly sees the corpse staring at him from outside, which freaks him out. David then goes to check the wooden box and discovers that the dead man is indeed dead. He wakes up the next morning for work, visibly exhausted with dark circles under his eyes due to lack of sleep. His stress gets doubled when his boss tasks him with completing the project work 2 days ahead of the deadline. Mr. Wu also promises him a promotion to the most awaited position of project manager if he manages to do so. Later, after work, David returns home and finds shoe prints on the floor which aren't his size. In a state of panic, he calls his daughter, asking her to meet him right away. Jessica who is hanging out with her boyfriend, excuses herself for an hour and drives to see her dad. They meet at a coffee shop where David shares about the substantial amount of money. However, he avoids disclosing the source of it and pretends to be working on something else. He confides in Jessica about his fear of failing at work, but she reassures him that he'll be fine. Back home, David rechecks the money as if it has become a part of his daily routine. He then begins cleaning the mysterious shoe prints and prepares his suit for his work the next day. After finishing the chores, he turns off the light, only to be startled by the sight of his own suit in the dark. I've really been letting myself go. He takes a moment to calm himself down, but he soon hears a noise from outside. He looks out through his window and sees a figure resembling the dead man walking towards the house. David hurriedly grabs a kitchen knife and runs out to confront the figure, but as usual, he finds no one there. Believing that this is happening because of the stolen money, he puts all the dollar bundles into a trash bag, throws it into the wooden box, and seals it with multiple nails. The next day at the office, David can't focus on his work as his mind is preoccupied by the thoughts of the money. He suddenly recalls a mysterious door within the closet, prompting him to sneak out of the office to check on it. He uses a drilling machine to open the door, but his efforts prove futile. Amidst this, David receives a call from the landscaper, reminding him that he will be coming to his place on Friday to renovate the yard. After the call, David goes to the yard, removes the nails around the wooden box, and opens it again. This time, he proceeds to check the pockets of the dead man and retrieves a wallet along with some keys. At night, as David walks up to his fridge to look for something to eat, the dead man suddenly charges at him, but the next second he snaps out of sleep, revealing that it was just his nightmare. As days pass by, he starts experiencing such horrific nightmares more often, which causes him to be deeply unsettled. One day, David takes a day off from work, retrieves a bundle of dollar notes from the wooden box, and purchases several security cameras. Afterwards, he installs these cameras, both inside and outside his house, also adding some lights to his yard. The surveillance system is accessible from his bedroom, and everything can be lightened up with a single click of a remote. He has taken this measure to identify and confront whatever has been causing disturbances during the nighttime. In the next scene, David uses the acquired key to unlock the door within the closet. Upon doing so, he uncovers a secret passage leading to the house's basement. With the help of his phone's flashlight, David heads down and discovers a grim sight. A number of lifeless bodies wrapped in plastic bags. Overwhelmed with panic, he hastily retreats and heads to his kitchen. He then considers alerting the police, but he soon hesitates because of the millions of dollars at stake. That very night, David is awakened by his security alarm. Swiftly turning on all the lights, he checks the CCTV footage on his monitors. At the same time, a thunderstorm causes a power outage, plunging the surroundings into darkness. This induces a moment of panic, but power is restored shortly. As soon as the monitor restarts, it reveals the dead man standing outside his bedroom. The figure also stares at the camera as if it's aware of David watching him. Shortly after, the dead man descends the stairs, prompting David to grab a baseball bat and pursue the corpse outside. In the process, he accidentally steps on the broken pieces of glass, which results in his foot bleeding. Despite the pain, he channels his inner John McClane and reaches the yard, shouting at the figure not to mess with him. He also opens the wooden box and yells at the dead body to open his eyes, but the corpse remains motionless. The following morning, David awakens and finds himself sleeping beside the dead body. He hastily gets up and vomits. Realizing he is running late for work, he rushes inside, cleans up, and gets dressed. As he is about to drive away, he sees the dead man standing in the yard, staring at him. This time, David doesn't freak out and instead steps out of his car to confront the figure. Seeing this, the corpse walks back to the box and lies down. Frustrated, David approaches the dead man and yells at him, but the corpse is again not moving. Having had enough, David gets a chainsaw and rips the dead body, splattering blood everywhere. After this, he goes to work with blood all over himself. There, Mr. Wu chastises him for showing up at work in such a condition. However, David, who is by now completely mentally unstable, yells back at his boss and even uses some cursing words. As a result of this, Mr. Wu fires him from the company and instructs the security guards to throw him out. David drives back home and finds the landscaper, who has discovered the dead body in the yard. The man tries to call the police, but David, in a violent outburst, strikes his head with a hammer and bludgeons him to death. Following this, he wraps the landscaper's body in a plastic bag and drags it down to the basement, aligning it with other dead bodies. He also does the same thing to the corpse in the wooden box. Later that night, David is once again alerted by a security alarm. Upon reviewing the camera footage, he spots the dead man again in his kitchen. Armed with a bat, he cautiously descends the stairs and attacks his best friend, who is actually there to check on him. However, David hallucinates Mark as the dead man and ends up killing him with the drilling machine. After this, he takes the dead body to the basement. In the morning, he again brings the money back into the house. By this point in time, David has already gone insane as he shows irrational behaviors such as talking to himself in the mirror, playing games with the money bag, and even watching movies with it. He even bought himself a subscription to Hulu. One day, David wakes up to the sound of the doorbell. Upon answering it, he sees that his daughter's boyfriend. Before Zach can introduce himself, David stomps his bat on his head, knocking him to the ground. After this, he wraps the still conscious Zach in the plastic bag before dragging him to the basement. Not long after, Jessica shows up and quickly senses something is amiss. But before she can comprehend the situation, David leads her to the basement where he knocks her unconscious. A few moments later, Jessica regains her consciousness, only to find herself chained to a pipe. David approaches her and tells her that he knows why she is here, to seize his money. The girl breaks down in tears and claims that she's just here to see him. Hearing this, David asserts that he knows how to fix this and walks away, leaving his daughter and her boyfriend to a grim fate. In the final scene, we see the insane David getting dressed in a suit and heading out to the yard amidst the rain. He pours all the money into the wooden box and buries himself along with it. He probably took this step to stop his madness and greed from going any further, or perhaps for the curse to continue.